There's a breakfast classic that sounds like it belongs in a quiet Parisian café, served beside a tiny cup of espresso with the Eiffel Tower somewhere in the distance. Its name carries a sense of elegance, tradition, and a very specific place of origin. It feels intentional, almost official, like it must have been perfected in France and exported to the rest of the world. But what if that name isn't telling the full story? What if this familiar dish has a past that stretches far beyond France, shaped by centuries of survival cooking, cultural exchange, and clever labeling? So why is it called French toast if it's not actually French? The answer takes us through medieval kitchens, ancient Rome, and even early American cookbooks, right here on History of Simple Things. Long before the country we now know as France existed, people were already soaking bread in milk and eggs and frying it. One of the earliest known references appears in the Roman cookbook commonly attributed to Apicius, known as De Re Coquinaria, written around the 4th or 5th century CE. The recipe describes bread soaked in milk and beaten eggs, then fried and sometimes drizzled with honey. The Romans did not call it French toast. They simply had a practical way to use stale bread. In a time when food waste could mean hunger, transforming old bread into something filling and sweet was a smart culinary solution. This technique spread across Europe as the Roman Empire expanded, embedding itself into regional cooking traditions long before France had its modern identity. As centuries passed, variations of the dish appeared across medieval Europe. In German-speaking regions, it became known as Arm Ritter, which translates to poor knights. In England, similar preparations were sometimes called pain perdu, a French term meaning lost bread, referring to bread that would otherwise have been discarded. The phrase pain perdu is still used in France today, and it's arguably the more authentic French name for the dish. Medieval cookbooks from England and France include recipes that involve soaking bread in egg and milk, then frying it in butter or oil. These versions were not considered uniquely French. They were part of a broader European cooking tradition focused on thrift and practicality. The dish's core idea was universal: revive stale bread and make it nourishing. The phrase French toast began appearing in English in the 17th century. One of the earliest known printed references in English dates to 1660 in a cookbook called The Accomplished Cook by Robert May. By that time, the recipe was already well established in England, so why attach the word French to it? During that era, labeling something as French often implied refinement or culinary sophistication. French cuisine had a reputation for elegance even in earlier centuries. Adding French to the name may have been a way to elevate a simple, humble dish. It is similar to how other foods in English-speaking countries have been branded with French to suggest style or flair, regardless of strict geographic accuracy. There's a popular story that French toast was named after a man called Joseph French in 18th century Albany, New York, who supposedly forgot the apostrophe in French's toast. However, historians generally dismiss this as a myth. There is no solid documentary evidence confirming Joseph French's role in naming the dish, and references to French toast predate the period when he allegedly created it. By the time the dish was common in colonial America, the name was already in use in England. American cookbooks from the 18th and 19th centuries continued using the term, helping to cement it in everyday language. While the Albany story is appealing, it does not hold up under historical scrutiny. In France, the dish is traditionally called pain perdu, meaning lost bread. The name reflects its original purpose, rescuing bread that would otherwise be wasted. Recipes for pain perdu appear in French culinary texts and are typically simple, often flavored with sugar, vanilla, or cinnamon. Unlike the American version, which is often served thick-cut with syrup, fruit, or powdered sugar, traditional French preparations can be more restrained, though modern variations exist. The fact that France does not commonly call it French toast reinforces the idea that the English name was an external label rather than a direct translation from French cuisine. Once the term French toast took hold in English-speaking countries, it stayed. Language has a way of solidifying around familiar phrases, even if they are not perfectly logical. Over time, the dish became a breakfast staple in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, served in diners, homes, and restaurants. The name no longer needed to be historically precise, it simply needed to be recognizable. In the 20th century, as packaged sliced bread became widespread and breakfast culture expanded, French toast grew even more popular. The name was printed in cookbooks, restaurant menus, and advertising campaigns, reinforcing its identity. By then, questioning whether it was truly French mattered less than the comfort and familiarity the dish provided. Names have a strange way of outliving the truth. French toast sounds precise, almost authoritative, yet its story stretches across empires, languages, and ordinary kitchens trying to avoid waste. What began as a practical solution in ancient times slowly picked up layers of identity as it moved from Rome to medieval Europe to English-speaking countries. The label stuck not because it was geographically accurate, but because language often favors familiarity over precision. In the end, French toast isn't really about France at all. It's about how everyday foods travel quietly through history, gathering new meanings as they go. And sometimes the most ordinary item on your breakfast plate carries a story far more global than its name suggests. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.